Daniel Jones signs with the Indianapolis Colts, and we have our first quarterback controversy of the season. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the brain, Luke Braun. On today's episode, we're going to talk about Najee Harris going out west to the Chargers. We're also going to talk about what happens with the Giants and Steelers quarterback position, and we will start with more quarterback talk because Daniel Jones goes to the Indianapolis Colts, creating a controversy with Anthony Richardson. Before we dive into all of it, though, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first to listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. The Colts make their move, add competition. My guy Jake Arthur from Locked On Colts broke down the big news.
The Colts are not done. And what is turning out to be probably the busiest free agency period that any of us can remember in Indianapolis Colts history. They now have their quarterback to compete with Anthony Richardson to be the starter. As today, NFL Network has reported that the Colts have signed Daniel Jones to a one-year deal for $14 million. Now, this deal is worth up to $17.7 million. I'm sure it's pretty insane, incentive-laden with play time and certain achievements. There's also $13.15 million guaranteed. So not a bad deal. They're not totally breaking the bank, but this deal does indicate that he's going to get a real shot to start. So while I'm sure the Colts do want Anthony Richardson to win this competition, it feels like they will be pretty comfortable if Daniel Jones gets this thing. So Jones, very much a take what the defense gives him kind of guy. He's not going to push the ball down the field a whole lot. He's going to remind you a whole lot more of a Gardner Minshew than he is a Anthony Richardson. So I do think this is enough pressure on Anthony to hopefully bring out the best in him. I still would consider him the leader in the clubhouse. However, the Colts do now have a backup if Anthony wins, who has played in the NFL and won some games, even got a nice $100+ million contract just a couple years ago. So Anthony Richardson, obviously the better player with the higher upside, but the Colts are not just going to hand him this thing. So we're going to have a ton more about this situation and everything else that happens in a crazy free agency period for you guys. Locked On Colts on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts.
So the Vikings were a team that were reportedly interested in Daniel Jones. The Colts, quote unquote, win that battle and land the veteran quarterback. I mean, Daniel Jones is somewhat of a punchline, but he has won a playoff game before. You know, it's not like he's completely unusable. From the Colts' perspective, I like this one. Do you think I'm crazy?
Yeah, I have a frequent listener and everydayer on Locked On Vikings whose screen name is the 14-yard line that tackled Danny Dimes. So my understanding of the Daniel Jones thing from local reporting in Minnesota is that the Vikings offered him something that was plenty competitive with that Colts deal. It might have even been more, or it might have been like more, but with less incentives, so max value was less or something like that. But it was more that Daniel Jones, I don't think he felt that the Vikings were going to give him a real chance in a competition against JJ McCarthy. And he does feel that way about the Colts. That's the way that my understanding. My understanding is that's like the environment, and in terms of what he believes in himself about who he can and can't beat. But that's the way it sounds like from local reporting in Minnesota, that the Vikings were going to be like, yeah, we'll give you a competition in formality, but really you're going to be the two. Versus the Colts, it's like true. So what actually happens there, right? Anybody's guess. The relationship between the Colts and Anthony Richardson is concerning me a lot. I mean, you have the thing where he took himself out of the game, and I think that really soured a lot of guys, right? Yes. Both in the locker room and in the staff on him. And I don't think there's a single outcome that could surprise me there, including the one where Daniel Jones starts every single game for the Colts and Anthony Richardson is on the trade block in camp.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely possible. And quite frankly, I think that Daniel Jones was smarter to go to the Colts because I think JJ McCarthy being in his first year of actually playing, Minnesota is going to be less likely to give up on him. And that's really what Daniel Jones needs. He needs somebody to give up on somebody and give him a chance because they don't know him. You know, he's something new, even though it may not be something good. But for Daniel Jones, the offense is already crafted in a way that could maximize your abilities. Daniel Jones isn't the athlete that Anthony Richardson is, but he's also a decent runner of the football. And I think from the Colts' perspective,
you could get a 3-step drop, get the ball out. Yes. And Anthony Richardson sometimes could not. Like sometimes the RPO stuff that they were having him do, like he just couldn't do the steps. Like it was really bad. This feels to me like the Colts have given up on Anthony Richardson, and it's just not fashionable to admit it yet. I don't want to say that. I like him so much. I liked him so much coming out. He's young. He's 21. Like you really shouldn't. But it kind of feels like they have, and maybe a fresh start is best for him. But I mean, I don't know. I guess he's got every chance in the world to just come on, dude. Just beat out Daniel Jones. That's all you got to do, and you can get the reins back on this franchise.
I found it funny. Over the past couple of years, the two lowest quarterbacks in passer rating are Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, and now they're both on the Indianapolis Colts. But like I was saying, with Daniel Jones being in a scheme that could maximize his talents with an opportunity, the Colts, they had, Gardner Minshew and Joe Flacco backing up Anthony Richardson. It just never made a lot of sense, in my opinion. You would want a quarterback with a similar skill set so it doesn't upset the apple cart so much with your offense mid-season. So I like the idea that Daniel Jones is at least similar enough that they can run that quarterback run game stuff. They can run the RPO stuff. They can still run their offense the same no matter who's at quarterback. I think that's a big factor of this for Indianapolis as well.
Yeah, you'll lose the Bamba thing. I think that was where like Joe Flacco paired with Anthony Richardson made sense to me because it's like, okay, we're gonna just heave with to Josh Downs and Pittman and like they had like a couple of like speedy burners that weren't that good but they were fast. Right. This is definitely a different vibe. Daniel Jones, like Jake said, is not a Bamba guy. He is, a deliver, a point guard type, and as a backup, I think that's beautiful no matter what your scheme is, because if you are the true blue backup, let's say Anthony Richardson wins the job and then goes down, which is also a consideration, then to win games you will be leaning on your skills, your Josh Downses, and it's just get the ball in their hands. And you can kind of move on from there, Jonathan Taylor and those guys. And getting the ball to a running back is something Daniel Jones has proven that he can do.
Yes, absolutely. And look, at the end of the day, when you have quarterbacks in this range, it's about being able to run the football, being able to protect them and let them get the ball out cleanly, and then using their legs as an extension of things to help maximize the value there. That's part of when you have Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, who may not be the best passers. You have to get to the threshold of value by pressing them with that run game ability, and both of those can do similar things. Two bad quarterbacks usually don't make a good one, though. So it'll be interesting to see if the Colts are able to improve, because they went out and did some things they don't normally do. They add Travarius Ward at cornerback. They add Cam Bynum at safety. A lot of Colts fans wanted additions in the secondary. They did that to go along with protecting themselves at the quarterback position. I don't think it's enough to make Indianapolis a true contender, but they'll be a feisty competitive team as they normally are. But talking about feisty competitive teams, the Minnesota Vikings went above and beyond expectations last year, but can they truly count on JJ McCarthy? Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Taking care of your mental health can feel like a big investment. It's just as important as taking care of your body. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session. But with BetterHelp, you can save up to 50% per session. BetterHelp offers a flat fee for weekly online therapy sessions, making professional support more accessible and affordable. With over 30,000 therapists and over 5 million people helped, it's the world's largest online therapy platform. I've worked with BetterHelp. I love that they make it easy for you to get matched with the best therapist for you. I think it's really important when you're doing these kind of things. And look, therapy isn't just for tough times. It's a great tool to learn coping skills and to help you set boundaries. Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, Luke, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL, recapping day 2 of free agency. The real biggest move, and obviously quarterbacks take up a lot of the space that we're in here, but Daniel Jones to the Indianapolis Colts. We touched kind of quickly on the Minnesota Vikings just because it seemed like Daniel Jones was an option for them. But Luke, I have you on the show. I have to ask now, spinning it forward, do you think that Minnesota goes out and gets Aaron Rodgers, who they've been rumored to be interested in? Or do you think that they're going to get a true backup and they're rolling with J.J. McCarthy from the start of the season?
Yeah, I don't buy the Aaron Rodgers reporting at all. There's just something about it that doesn't pass the smell test for me for unrelated reasons. But
right,
again, going off of local reporting, the vibe in the whole league is that if you go to Minnesota, you ain't starting because it's JJ's team. That's the vibe that people have, which is why I kind of don't buy that like Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. The Giants and Steelers are teams that those two guys can go get a real starting job, bona fide, and not really have any kind of like confusion about it, right? So, I mean, for better or worse, the Vikings, I think, are doing it. I think he's going to be the week 1 starter. That said, right now, the only other quarterback under contract for the Vikings is Brett Rippon, and I don't think he's good enough to be the backup.
Yeah,
so what we're looking for is and Kwesi, he thinks a lot in like optionality. He thinks a lot in if-thens, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily about how good of a quarterback do you need. It's what scenarios do you want to be covered against. And I think right now, plan A is J.J. McCarthy is the guy he's going to go get the thing. They want to be guarded against the world where he comes back and something went wrong in his rehab and he's not available, or he's just not the same guy this offseason or whatever. Like, they want to be guarded against that possibility, but that's like contingency planning, not we're going to do a competition and we don't know. That's my understanding of where they're at with J.J. McCarthy. And that the names for that guy, you're looking at like a Mac Jones, Carson Wentz kind of tier guy where you're like, we don't expect that guy to be our starter. We're pretty happy with him as the backup. And if he does have to start for a little bit because J.J. McCarthy still needs 4 weeks, we're not all, running around with our hair on fire and burning down the building over it.
Well, that makes a ton of sense. And then you spin it forward to, well, if Rodgers is certainly not going to Minnesota, then you have the Giants and you have the Steelers and you have Russell Wilson and you have Aaron Rodgers. The way that I'm looking at, the Titans don't seem interested in either of those guys. It's not something that they're interested in. And it looks like the Browns aren't interested in any of those guys either. So it comes down to those two teams. If you're the Steelers, who are the better football team than the New York Giants, who do you prefer? Who do you think gives you the better opportunity to maximize your 2025?
The reports have implied that they like Aaron Rodgers better. I don't know if I agree with them.
What do
I don't
you
think I agree
not
with
the
them.
reports. Okay.
I for me, looking at DK and George Pickens, please give me Mr. Moonball. I think Russell Wilson, Moonball dude. Now, and plus you got a rapport with him in the building. He's got a rapport with George Pickens. There's a little bit of a continuity angle there that is always nice. And I mean, he sort of fell off down the stretch last year. But I'm not worried about that. Like, can I please reunite with DK? Like, it feels too perfect, man. And you're really going to go get like the biggest jerk in the league.
I'll tell you this, Luke. You're not the only person who thinks that. My guy, Chris Carter, wants nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers. Locked On Steelers.
So they overpaid for Justin Fields. I think they really did. So instead of going and getting that guy or Daniel Jones, who, objectively sucks, just bring back Russell Wilson. I know that he's got beef with Arthur Smith. I know that there's probably work that out. Be professionals, because the thing that he did for you well last year was when he had protection and he had a run game, he could make the deep ball work and he can make a couple big throws. Now he will have 2 legitimate deep threats, 2 of the best deep threats in the NFL. And like you said, moonball away with Russell Wilson. Just be like, you know what? Hey, we're setting up, one-on-one opportunities on each side of the field. And I said this last night when they traded for DK Metcalf. You can literally just line up both of those guys. One's the Z, one's the X, on opposite sides of the field, on opposite sidelines. And when they're out there, it's like daring the defense to not go too deep safeties, because you're saying, okay, have your corners in one-on-one coverage and see what happens. And if they roll with 2 deep safeties, all of a sudden that means 7 guys are in the box. You get a lighter box, you get a chance to run the ball, and then you can play the pace that works better for you.
God,
The
makes
moon
so
ball
much
haunts
sense.
you. I mean, you guys both hit the moon ball thing. Here's what I got to say, because I disagree with you both. I think they clearly need to go get Aaron Rodgers. Here's the thing, the moon ball thing, just because that's something Russell Wilson is known for, I would argue that the ball placement of the back shoulder fade of Aaron Rodgers is just as effective and would be just as dynamic with these two options. I think that fits perfectly with Aaron Rodgers' best skill.
If they know the hand
as
signals.
well. Yeah, well,
The secret
listen,
hand
yeah,
signals that he won't take the time to teach you.
But I think that Aaron Rodgers is better over the middle of the field. The Pittsburgh Steelers probably aren't going to have a top-tier great offensive line. So Rodgers getting the ball out of his hands quickly, as opposed to Russell Wilson, who holds the ball forever, is actually going to be more fruitful for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. That's why I think they prefer Aaron Rodgers, because he can get the ball out of his hands quicker, which helps their offensive line and helps their offense overall. I'm going with Aaron Rodgers to the Steelers. I think the Giants go get Russell Wilson. If Aaron Rodgers goes to the Steelers, do you take Russell Wilson if you're the Giants, or do you trade everything you can to come up and get Cam Ward?
God, it sucks, man.
Your
It
job's
just-
on the line.
it all
Do you go with
sucks.
37-year-old Russell Wilson, or do you trade everything to go up and get Cam Ward?
I
Job on
trade
the
everything
line,
to go
Luke.
get Cam Ward.
You got to. You got to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to know why? If I'm a GM and I'm Joe Shannon, it's all on the line, because I'm really hard to fire now. We got a rookie and no assets. Yeah, good luck selling that job to somebody. You ain't getting rid of me.
And I think a rookie quarterback, like if there's a threshold of wins to save their job, make it whatever you want. 7, 8,
Yeah.
9. Getting a rookie quarterback immediately takes that threshold down, because it's more impressive. Your season feels better. There's more optimism. Winning 6 games with Cam Ward is way better than winning 8 with Russell Wilson.
Like, had a couple good touchdown throws in there.
Yes, yes,
Plus, like,
the hope is
you
fine.
have an infrastructure, I think, on either of these teams to support a rookie if it comes to that, right?
Yes,
Malik
yes.
Neighbors, you have Andrew Thomas,
Brian Burns,
locking it
Kayvon
down on the
Thibodeau,
last-
like
Yeah.
they just signed Javon Holland. I wanted to make sure I brought
There you
that
go.
up. Javon Holland, I thought, was a steal at safety, only paying $15 million, $30 million guaranteed. That's a steal for the Giants there. So I think they have a ton of playmaking all over the roster, honestly. That's why they should mortgage the future, because I think they are a QB away from being a very competitive football team, because at premium positions and important positions, they have really good players.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you want to foster a good rookie quarterback, you need a guy for him to throw to and a guy protecting his blind side. That is in place.
He's got them. He's got them. Top tier guys, maybe top 5 at their position, top 10 at their position. Certainly, you have a top 10 interior rusher. You have probably a top 15, top 12 edge rusher in Brian Burns. Kayvon Thibodeau, if he ever turns into the player that he was supposed to be, he can at least be a very good secondary rusher. Like, you have enough to be good.
Yeah, and you've drawn up a perfect scenario for your Titans to end up with Russell Wilson.
Gross. They're not interested. I think the Titans go out and get Mac Jones. That's it. That's where
Oh my
I think
God.
this is. I think the Titans trade down. They're already signing filler veterans. The Titans are eating their vegetables
You're just
this
you're just
offseason.
taking a year off.
Yep. They got
Wolf.
average offensive tackle play from Dan Moore. They're going to put Mac Jones and Will Levis in a competition, and they're just going to accept that, hey, we can't do that this year. We got to build this thing out. But if we talk Titans too
That is
long,
grim.
I'll start to get emotional, and it won't be good for the podcast. So with that being said, let's talk about another big move. Najee Harris goes to the Los Angeles Chargers. I love that fit. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. March Madness is here. FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, even who's going to cut down the nets. I love, betting on the tournament, whether I'm going with a massive underdog, whether I like chalk in all the games, which is probably what I'm going with this year. Either way, I can bet the spreads, the totals, the game props. The FanDuel app, super easy to use. And when I win, I get paid instantly, no waiting around. So make sure that you visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, Luke, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the Daniel Jones move and the competition that created in the dominoes that fell after that with the Minnesota Vikings and what that can mean for the Steelers and the Giants and the rest of the quarterbacks. But we got some skill position movement on Wednesday or Tuesday as well. And we start with Najee Harris going to the Los Angeles Chargers. Jim Harbaugh gets his wrecking ball. And my guy, Daniel Wade from Locked On Chargers, broke it down.
The Chargers have made their first splash in free agency, signing running back Najee Harris, and although it's still early right now, I'm struggling to see the vision. This is Daniel Wade here from Locked On Chargers, coming to you with the news that according to Adam Schefter, Najee Harris is signing a one-year deal in LA worth up to $9.25 million for a running back that's only averaged 3.9 yards per carry and has some significant tread taken off the tires with over 1,000 carries in those 4 seasons for a physical runner. That being said, he does, as a physical runner, fit with what Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh want to do. He can batter people. He's forced more missed tackles, according to PFF, than anyone since 2021. Yet, I still feel like the Chargers would have to elevate him to get their money's worth, and without any significant upgrades on the interior of the offensive line so far, it's hard for me to see them doing that. There's still time, but there's going to have to be some big moves made by Joe Ortiz if they want to rekindle the excitement this Chargers fan base had with the amount of cap space that they went into free agency with. But for the full breakdown, make sure to check out the Locked On Chargers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Man, I am kind of shocked. I think that Najee Harris is a great fit for the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh wants to run with power, wants to dominate the line of scrimmage, wants to be physical, and Najee Harris with a mediocre at best offensive line in Pittsburgh. Some would argue bad offensive line. Mediocre seems like it would be fair. Najee Harris was still able to get 1,000 yards every single year. If you gave him a decent offensive line, he would be more productive than that. I'm not going to mistake Najee Harris for an elite running back or anything like that. But at the same time, he's a good, solid player. I don't think they overpaid.
I think he lost his job to an undrafted free agent in Jalen Warren. I mean, Jalen Warren's a good player, but they're tendering him.
You need multiple players.
And so do the Chargers. I think that's right. the deal here is here's your thunder, you need a lightning, whether that's finding a way to bring back J.K. Dobbins, whether that's drafting someone at 22.
TreVeyon Henderson. They're going to take him in the draft.
If they take TreVeyon Henderson and pair him with Najee Harris, that's gorgeous.
Yes.
Love it. Here's another thing. I think the Chargers are being smarter about this than they're getting credit for, because there's $4 million of this contract is in incentives. It is not a $9.25 million contract. Right. It's up to $9.25 million if he hits those incentives, at which point you're totally happy with $9.25 million. So I think they're being smarter about this than they're getting credit for. They're aware, okay, that he only got like 3.8 yards per carry or whatever it was. They know, all right? You don't have to tell them that. But I think it's an incomplete picture. And I think they've properly valued Najee Harris, in my opinion. But that is not going to be, I don't think Najee Harris is your bell cow. I don't think he's a bell cow in this league. He just doesn't have the explosiveness. And that's honestly the problem I have with a lot of the rookies too. So if the Chargers are going to get a rookie like Omarion Hampton, that top end speed, DJ Giddens, the top end speed, didn't see it on tape. They ran good 40s, which helps to assuage that. But those kinds of guys, draft Junty, do it. Draft him at 22 if he makes it that far. Do it. Yeah. And then I'll be, you know what? And then Najee in the short yardage situations, the Thunder, the Lightning, okay, yeah. Then it makes total sense, and you can be that run heavy team that you want to be. But at the same time, when you have Justin Herbert, being like a Greg Roman, Jim Harbaugh ground and pound team is always a little bit bruh, you have Justin Herbert. Do it.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And listen, the point that I would make is last year, just some home cooking, and I'll tie in the Vikings too. Tony Pollard got $8 million a season. Now with the guarantees and everything, it's basically 7.5. And I was like, oh, that's a little much. But you look at what percentage of the salary cap that is. It's like 1.5% of the salary cap. Well, the salary cap went up $22 million. So to me, this year's $10 million contract is last year's $8 million contract or $7.5 million contract. I think because the money is so high that people lose perspective of what percentage this is of the cap. Like Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones gets 2 years, $20 million. That's $10 million a year. $10 million a year is average starting running back money in the NFL. That is average to slightly above average money. And that's exactly where those players are. They're, 10 to 16 on the rankings and stuff like that. So I don't really even think it's that much money when you look at how the salary cap has gone up.
And so there's a way you can like directly compare this with the overthecap.com. They've got a contract history page that lists the percentage of cap that every contract was. So if you take that, if you take the full value of this, 9.25, that's 3.3% of the cap. Other 3.3% of the cap contracts were like Chuba Hubbard last year and Reggie Bush when he signed in 2013 for the Lions, like way deep in his career. Like that's the kind of money we're talking about. So yeah, we can probably all calm down. It's fine.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson got traded to the Houston Texans from the Eagles. Nobody wants to keep him around after he's there for a year. They just can't wait to get rid of him. Good player,
like
but
that.
Yeah, there's something there.
Get 3 interceptions, also, piss everybody off, go to the next city. I can respect it. It's a living.
Yeah, he's a mercenary. We're hearing that Joey Bosa likely to go to the San Francisco 49ers. We haven't seen that officially happen yet, but that's a
rumor, not a report. Different.
They got rid of Leonard Floyd. It seems like that's a good fit. And it would make sense for him and his brother to kind of, if they could be healthy, that's a good edge rush group. And we've learned that when you're in the NFC, if you want to win the Super Bowl, you got to have a great pass rush. So they're trying to build that. I would like that move for them.
It'd be something, man. The 49ers need something. I deeply disrespect what the 49ers have done. They are letting maybe the best team in the NFC over the last decade. Like they have been the most consistent contender. They've been in the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl pretty much every year, and you have let that completely dissipate. And like piece after piece after piece go away so that you can pay Brock Purdy. And I don't hate Brock Purdy. I'm not one of the biggest Brock Purdy haters. I've called him a game manager in a complimentary sense. That is, like, I think he's a great example of how you can go far in the playoffs with a guy that just dishes it out to your best players. But part of that was that they had a lot of talent around him and they had a system that worked, and all Brock Purdy had to do was pull the levers.
Yeah.
But you're not letting that system go away and turning yourself into a team that now has to run through Brock Purdy, that is asking more of him than he is able to do. And we saw that last year when guys started getting hurt and when he had to really play hero ball. The problem is he gets addicted to hero ball and then he starts making mistakes trying to play too much hero ball. And then suddenly you're not a game manager anymore. You're a bozo ball QB, and that ain't who Brock Purdy can be. Okay, if you want to be a bozo ball QB, you got to be talented like Sam Darnold and do it. Or Josh Allen, right? Probably the greatest bozo ball QB we've ever seen.
Fair.
So whatever the 49ers are doing, I think they have their priorities mixed up. And I know that it's crazy. I talk all the time on this show about how QB is the number one thing. You've got to get your QB straightened out. But can you look me in the eye and tell me that the 49ers wouldn't have been better if they let Brock Purdy walk and pay the Sam Darnold contract that the Seahawks just did? You really look me in the eye and say that would not have helped them, and then they would have been able to keep like half the guys that have now gone to other teams? They're still doing cap casualties. They're going to cut Javon Hargrave too. Congratulations on your Bosa brothers. You'll have the best feel-good 6-win season I've ever seen.
Yeah.
They're the worst team in the NFC West now.
They're a team that's slowly deteriorating, and it's like they know it, and it's like quicksand. They know it, and there's nothing they can do to get out of it, and they can't pull themselves out of it.
I can think of one thing they could have done, but it's too late now.
It is too late.
Eat it, John Lynch. You're done.
You have to wonder when somebody there at the top feels the effects of the disappointment that they've had the last few years. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. Again, by the time that you hear this, there's probably going to be even more news and even more signings. Can't keep up this time of year. So make sure that you tune in to the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL with Tony Wiggins and Ross Jackson filling in for Tony as well. So make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. That's going to do it for me, your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, my co-host, the Brain, Luke Braun. Thanks for tuning in, and stay safe out there.